Oh, this room, it's been too long. It hasn't changed in the slightest, though. And it's been some 6 months, hasn't it? It's a long time for things to stay so familiar. I didn't know when you might return, so I wanted everything to be as you left it. But it has been some 6 months, it's true. So is your father alright, Susie? What happened? My father? Yes, Professor Mikotoba. I mean, it was half a year ago, but that's why you went back to Japan. Because of the telegram you received saying he'd fallen ill with a very high fever for some unknown reason. That's right. So I was surprised to learn you'd be coming back so soon. Surprised but happy. I think I wrote about it in my letter to you, that it was all a trick. My father is in fine health, and I'm obviously very relieved about that. Well, we're all delighted to have you back. It was quite by accident that I've been able to return to Europe, actually. It's because of a very grand conference called the International Forensic Science Symposium. The International Forensic... That's the same symposium Lord Strongheart mentioned. Anyway, I've arrived safe and sound, and all that matters is that I'm here now. After all, I haven't yet fulfilled my promise to you, Iris. Oh. You must tell us everything that happened while you were back in Japan. Yes, of course, I shall. And there's one other thing. Something you wrote in your letter that particularly grabbed my attention. About you-know-who. About Kazuma. I know. I'll tell you all that I can. When I first arrived back in Japan, I really thought I'd never be allowed to return to Britain. But curiously, after that awful trial at the Supreme Court, Father's mood changed entirely. The awful trial? Oh, yeah, for the murder of Giselle Brett. Oh, you dressed as a man then, didn't you, Susie? Oh, well, yes, since women are forbidden in the courtroom, I had no choice. Wow, amazing. I wish I'd seen it. Don't you? Yes, I suppose so. I want to play at being a lawyer now. I could wear a false mustache, maybe. I don't think any mustache could hide the fact that you're just 10 years old, Iris. There's something else I've been wanting to ask you, Miss Susato. It's about the real reason why Professor Mikotoba summoned you back to Japan. You said in your letter it was something to do with that convict's loot we found in Mr. Natsume's lodgings? That's right, the very large dog collar we found with the bee emblem on it. It seems Mr. Natsume included a drawing of the collar in the report he submitted about his time in Britain. I understand that when Father saw the report, he turned as white as a sheet. Why would that be? Father came to Britain himself, of course, to study. It was some time ago now, but he stayed for 6 years. I can only imagine that something must have happened during that time. But if he refuses to tell me what it is, then I intend to find the answers for myself. And I've decided that I, for one, won't keep any more secrets. Oh. It's a very meaningful look Susato's giving Iris there. Lord Strongheart mentioned something about that symposium too. I think he said that investigative authorities from 40 different countries would attend. Yes, and from Japan, my father and Judge Jigoku have been invited. It's something of an honor, I believe. Well, Professor Mikotoba is the leading expert in forensic medicine in our country, after all. But who's the other person you mentioned? A judge, did you say? Yes, His Excellency, Judge Seishiro Jigoku. You've met him. Last year, in the Supreme Court. You can't possibly have forgotten. That terrible trial of yours when you were accused of murder. Oh, yes. I try to think of that as a positive turning point in my life these days. Well, it was Judge Jigoku who presided over that trial. If I'm perfectly honest, I'd be happy to never see that man's face again in my life. Oh, well, anyway, as Father was invited to the symposium, he agreed to me to returning to Britain too. He won't actually arrive until next month, but I couldn't wait. So I pleaded with him, and in the end, he agreed to me going on ahead. Yeah, about the symposium, it seems as though Lord Strongheart was put in an awful lot of work to make it happen. It's obviously very important. I believe it is, yes. As I understand it, Lord Strongheart organized the entire event himself. I think he's hoping that by achieving exceptional results, he'll get the job of Attorney General, the most senior position in the British justice system. He's hoping to use his power to create the world's finest policing institution. That's what Father said anyway. Apparently, it's Lord Strongheart's lifelong ambition. Does Professor Mikotoba know Lord Strongheart personally then? Actually, Lord Strongheart gave me a long speech about this very subject only yesterday, but I sort of lost the will to live early on and didn't really listen to much of it. How trying for you. Giselle Brett. The woman whose unforgivable actions ended in me being wrongly accused of a crime I didn't commit. The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson. Yes, Giselle Brett. That's a name I won't forget for as long as I live. The extraordinary thing is, though, it seems it's a name we should all forget. Sorry? Since the incident, our government's intelligence services have been investigating Miss Brett. But it turns out that an English woman by the name of Giselle Brett didn't actually exist. Didn't exist? But how can that be? It was a pseudonym. Her real name was Shin. And she wasn't a visiting student either. That was a front. A front? Who was she then? Miss A. Shin. Her name is literally all our intelligence services have been able to ascertain about her. Nobody knows why or even how she came to be in Japan. It's a complete mystery. But that makes no sense. It's no easy task to be accepted as a foreign student anywhere. What could the student have been up to? Or woman? Did it just say woman or student? Why the heck did I? Woman. It was the woman, not student. I see. Look, I was like, okay. I can read, I swear. Is that she had some business in our country that we don't yet understand. And now she's been killed. While all the questions surrounding her existence remain unanswered. I'm afraid so. A. Shin. Who on earth was she? And why do I feel as though I've heard that name before somewhere? After my friend Ray's trial, the reporter who actually killed Miss Brett said something very strange. I know the truth. I know you had a hand in what went on, in that visiting student's fate. Nobody here in Japan knows anything about it. They don't know that the guy never made it to England, that he died on that steamship, and that he'll never... Obviously, I couldn't ask him to elaborate at the time. But later, I visited the man in his prison cell and asked him what he was going to say about Kazuma. And what did you learn? After he died on the voyage to Great Britain, his body should have been unladen at the port of Hong Kong and passed into the care of the consulate staff there. Should have been? Well, it turns out that his body never arrived. It just disappeared. What? Kazuma's body vanished? Our government tried to cover the fact up, it seems. They erected a grave on the cliffs by our hometown. Except Kazuma isn't there. Did Professor Mikotoba know? Yes, it would seem that he did. But he didn't tell me. They're still investigating what happened to Kazuma's body as we speak. I don't believe it. And what is this acute feeling of apprehension I have all of a sudden? Thinking back now, some of the things that happened on the SS Buria were definitely strange. I mean, after he died, we never saw his body again, did we? Could it be? Could it be that he's actually still alive? Stop it. It's too much to bear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Just thinking about the possibility pains me so very much. Cast your mind back for a moment, Mr. Naruhodo. When Kazuma was discovered, Mr. Sholmes was there, wasn't he? And he definitely examined the body. I remember it clearly. Oh, you're right. So if Kazuma hadn't actually been dead at all, it would mean that Mr. Sholmes had lied to us. But there's no reason why he would possibly have done such a thing. I suppose that's true. The idea that he might still be alive somewhere. It wants to fill me with hope, but I can't let it. Because if it turned out not to be true, then I'd be back at the bottom of that awful pit of despair again. I'm terrified of what that might do to me. I know she's given the idea the thought it deserves. It's Susato we're talking about after all, so I probably shouldn't push it now. Must have been about a year ago now. I wrote a really long story based on some of my father's old notes. It's about one of Hurley's greatest exploits. I called it The Hound of the Baskervilles. But then Mr. Sholmes forbade you from publishing it and put the manuscript somewhere nobody could get their hands on it. So nobody knows anything about it apart from Hurley and I. But for some reason, you knew the title of it, didn't you, Susie? And you wouldn't tell me how you'd come to know it. Yeah, but I made you a promise that I would explain one day, didn't I? I think it's time. Oh. I'm only sorry if I've had to keep it from you for so long, Iris. It was completely by accident that I came to know the title of your manuscript, Iris. It was a short while before we left Japan. I was cleaning Father's study and I saw something on his writing desk. A large box of papers. There was a label affixed to the box that was written in English. It read, The Hound of the Baskervilles. What? My Baskerville story? Of course I had no idea what it was at the time, but Father came in and... Susato, what are you doing? Oh. Did you look at those papers? No, I simply read the label, that's all. Well, put it out of your mind. Sorry? Forget that you ever saw it, and certainly don't tell anybody else about this. Do you understand? But what was Iris's manuscript doing in Japan? I have no idea. But when I heard Iris mention the word Baskerville that day, the title just slipped out. I would never have guessed that it was an unpublished account of one of Mr. Sholmes' exploits. When I returned to Japan, I asked Father to explain, but he refused to answer any of my questions, and there was no sign of the big box in his office. That's really all I know about it. I have no doubt that Father has a very good reason for being so secretive about it, but still. I made up my mind to explain myself to both of you. Well, thank you for being so honest, Susie. So, Mr. Naruhodo, I'm ready to start investigating if you are. I've committed every detail about the case to memory. And Iris has told me about the disturbing happenings at the Waxwork Museum as well. So, you're fully abreast of the situation already, Mr. Sato. I'd expect nothing less, to be honest. I would think our first port of call should be to investigate this Mr. Drebber, the engineer responsible for building the elaborate machine that was used to effect his this extraordinary trick. Yes, a conjurer of sorts, by the sound of it, well known in the fields of science and magic. Then we need to go and arrest him. Well, yes, he must know the truth behind this case, so I agree we really do need to find the guy. Sounds like it's a case of tracking someone down, which is a job for the police or a great detective, Are we supposed to to guess who she might be thinking of? We don't have much time, so we need to get started straight away, I think. Good idea. Well, good luck. Oh, you're not coming today? I'm going to Brixton Road shortly for the herb market. But let me know later how you got on, won't you? That was a little abrupt. The pull of the herb market must be strong. Oh my goodness, he's going crazy. What's he doing? Oh my, the whole wall of the cell is covered in mathematical equations. And he's still writing more now. Professor, sorry to interrupt. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. And who is this young lady? My name is Susato Mikotoba. I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. It's a pleasure to meet you, Professor. Oh, if only I'd met a refined young woman like you sooner. None of this would have happened. Nope, that's not logical. That makes no sense at all. Oh dear, I'm sorry if my presence here upsets you. I owe you an apology too, Professor. I didn't manage to deliver what I promised you I would in court this morning. Oh no. The whole miserable affair. It all happened because I've been such a complete and utter clot. Professor Hairbrain, what have you been working on in your cell? Oh, you mean that? Oh dear, how embarrassing. I was suddenly struck by an idea, you see, and I simply had to write it down. The wall was all I had. It was all I had to hand. Oh, is this some new hypothesis? Something to surpass your super high voltage instantaneous kinesis, maybe? No, actually, this is my autobiography. Your autobiography? How I was diddled and fiddled by Albert Hairbrain. I found I can represent my odd fortunes with only odd numbers in an ambitious set of simultaneous equations. Really? I'm going to have to pay back all the loans I took for the kinesis machine, you see. So it's going to be a new serial publication from next month. Part 1, an odd birth, an odd upbringing. You can't beat the man's optimism, that's for sure. I see. Well, for now, would you mind if we talked a little more about the case? Oh, yes, of course. I've been working through the numbers. I was diddled, I was fiddled by the pair of them. By Osman and by the aloof engineer Drebber. Okay, we're not going to have to sit through an explanation of all these equations, are we? Everything I believed in has been turned on its head. My research, Mr. Osman, the kinesis machine, my hypothesis even. I'm sorry it's come to this. There was really no other way. No, it's not your fault. I wanted to protect my work, but in the end, there was nothing worth protecting. It was never my intention to deceive anyone. I didn't want to trick the public. No, of course you didn't. But in court this morning, I realized something. Oh? If you've done something wrong without knowing it, you've still done something wrong. Logically, it makes no difference if you are aware of it or not. Ignorance is a poor excuse. The blame still lies with me. Oh, Professor. He believed in me this morning, you know. Barack did. He believed in my hypothesis. Well, I think. I think that was just a necessary factor in the prosecution establishing its case. No, Barack wouldn't do something like that. I'm sure he genuinely believed it. Did he? I think I understand now why it was that he decided to take on the prosecution in my trial, I mean. After the terrible accident happened, nobody would believe in my hypothesis anymore. Not the police, not the prosecution service, not any lawyers even. I feel like I dealt some kind of finishing blow there. So if any other prosecutor had taken the case, if it was anyone other than Barack, I'm sure the prosecution would have declared my hypothesis a complete and utter nonsense. And in that case, you would have been declared a fraud yourself, Professor. Exactly, which would have been a fate worse than death for me, but Barack insisted that I was a proper man of science from start to finish. You think that's why I know him very well indeed. He's an extremely kind-hearted soul. But that extremely kind-hearted soul spent all morning trying to paint you as a murderer, didn't he? Well, admittedly, that part of the analysis appears to have some flaws in it. And what about the whole Reaper side of things? How does that fit into the kind-hearted soul idea? Do you think he set out to trick me from the very start? I'm sorry to say that does seem likely, yes. When I first met him, he introduced himself as a wealthy financier. He looked over the paper I'd written and said my work would benefit all humanity and must be pursued. He was so enthused. He was so empathetic. But in reality, he was the mastermind of some vast criminal network, it seems. I still can't believe it. As the machine was essentially a set decoration for some stage magic, it probably didn't require a large amount of investment, actually. But the scale of it, it wasn't just some small trick. It was a very elaborate feat of deception. All young scientists are full of hope about their whatever. Ideas full of zeal. But none of us have any money. We want to do research, but we can't afford it. Many of us take on barely legal part-time work to try to earn just a few measly pennies to carry on. To go through all of that only to be taken for a complete fool. It's too rotten to believe. It is, I agree. And that's why we have to find those responsible and bring them to justice. Mr. Osman is no more, of course, which leaves only the engineer. Mr. Enoch Drebber. Is he an engineer or a magician or a swindler? It was about a year ago when Mr. Osman first brought Drebber to meet me at my laboratory. Since then, I've met him many times to discuss details about the kinesis machine, but at no point did you have any inkling that he was just an illusionist? Oh, he definitely wasn't just an illusionist. What do you mean? He was a wealth of deep scientific knowledge. There's no question that the man's a genuine scientist. It's instantly apparent in conversation. I see. But the wretched man deceived you, Professor. It's unforgivable. We must do everything we can to find him and bring him to justice. And there are no more clues you can give us as to his whereabouts? I'm sorry, we only ever discussed the kinesis machine, nothing more, well, nothing else. Although just once, I did visit his workshop. What workshop? Drebber's enormous fabrication laboratory where he constructed my great machine. Why didn't you mention this before? Enoch Drebber's workshop. There's every chance we might find the man there. So you've been to Drebber's place of work then? Yes, just once, you understand. It was an enormous place, plenty of room to construct the kinesis machine, you see. Where can we find it? We have to get there at once. There's a good chance that we'll find Drebber there. Well, yes, definitely, I'm sure. As in, I'm sure you're not going to want to hear this. But I have absolutely no idea where the workshop is. At all. I'm so sorry. I was more than half expecting that. You see, I was blindfolded in the carriage the entire way there. He blindfolded you? You He wasn't taking any chances then. The place was incredible, the pinnacle of modern engineering. Even the oil he used was the very best. Oh, a special French machine oil that's impossible to obtain in Britain. Oh, the indescribable scent of the imported oil. Perfumers across the world should forget their scent formula and use that instead. What do you think, Miss Susato? Eau de machine for your next birthday? I've never used any kind of perfume, and I'm not sure I'd like to start with that. I don't suppose you know even part of the workshop's address? You don't have a business card for Mr. Drebber, for example. The man was clearly very cautious, Miss Susato. Yes, I do. He gave me his business card once. It's right here. Look. What? Let me see that. Oh, etiquette to the wind, why don't you? Enoch Drebber, engineer. I'm afraid that's all it says. There's no address. No. Oh, well. I can't say I'm surprised. Still, this could be useful. Well, thanks for that. Oh, who's that standing beside Lord Strongheart? I wonder. I've never seen her before. Ah, the young champion of the court. You had some success this morning, I understand. And you've thrown the entire government into disarray as a result. Oh, you mean because of Professor Harebrain's experiment? Sham science being demonstrated at London's Great Exhibition. The country's been made to look foolish, and now politicians are scrabbling to respond. Lord Van Zykes is in Whitehall as we speak, giving an emergency briefing. Oh dear, I didn't mean to cause any trouble. None of this is your responsibility. The government is entirely to blame for having been taken in. The special dispensation that prevents investigation at the scene will be annulled later today. Once that happens, my forensic investigation team will move in and deal with the scrap metal in no time. It's scrap metal now, is it? Until later then, Lord Strongheart. Yes, thank you. Who was that? That was Dr. Courtney Scythe, Scotland Yard's esteemed chief coroner. She's leading the forensic investigation team's handling of the case. She was just delivering her report about the victim, in fact. Oh, I see. About Mr. Ostman. Following the outcome of the trial earlier, I asked the coroner's office to reevaluate its findings. I don't have time to tell you what she concluded. If you want to know, you'll have to ask her directly. You can find her in the forensics laboratory. Oh, right. Now, what were you here to see me about? I can give you 7 minutes and 39 seconds of my time. So he's not running quite so spectacularly late anymore. What exactly is this forensic investigation team that you mentioned before? The British Empire's police force must become the most exemplary in the world. For that to happen, it's imperative that we embrace forensic science and everything it has to offer. I first created the forensic investigation team a year ago now, unofficially of course, to pave the way. Goodness, a year ago. At next month's symposium, I intend to present the results of their work to the world. Once I do that, the House of Lords will be powerless to oppose the creation of a full-scale forensics division. And once that happens, the position of Attorney General will be mine, and criminals will suffer dearly. What do you mean? For too long, those scoundrels have made a mockery of our legal system with false evidence and bribes. But London's scum is about to be rounded up and burnt in the fires of hell. I intend to see to it personally. by creating the finest police force the world has ever known to protect our honor and our future. Look at those eyes. He means every word. Dr. Scythe is an extremely reliable coroner. When I officially establish the forensics division at Scotland Yard, she will run it as my right-hand woman. Now then, speaking of the symposium, Miss Mikotoba. Oh, yes, my lord? Your father should be on the high seas as we speak, making his way here to represent the Empire of Japan. Yes, that's right. I understand he will arrive at the beginning of next month. Are you acquainted, Lord Strong? Oh, I forgot who was talking. Are you acquainted, Lord Strongheart? With Professor Mikotoba, I mean? It was many years ago now, but yes, I remember Dr. Mikotoba very well. If my memory serves, it was some 15 years ago now that your father came to Britain as a visiting student. It was the year I was born, so yes, 16 years ago, in fact. Mikotoba was a young practitioner of forensic science, and Jigoku accompanied him as a young, promising judge. The punctiliousness and politeness of the Japanese at the time impressed us greatly. Not that I wish to imply impoliteness or carelessness on your part in any way. I didn't think that you were. Dr. Mikotoba studied forensics at one of London's large hospitals. St. Sinners! Oh wait, don't we know this hospital? St. Sinners, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Scythe was also there, as it happens. Then, Dr. Scythe knows my father, does she? She was a young medical assistant at the time, so I doubt their paths crossed regularly, but I've no doubt they knew each other superficially. After all, Dr. Mikotoba was here studying his subject for some 6 years in total. 6 years? It's a long time to be studying abroad, isn't it? I lived with my grandmother in those years. So he left his newly born daughter behind and went overseas for 6 whole years? It was a rather turbulent time at home. Oh. Perhaps father wanted a reason to get away. What do you mean? Why? Well, clearly something was going on at the time. Might be about her mom, like maybe, like is she like, what's the, like Maya and Mia? I mean, that doesn't happen until like later in the game, but I think, well, their mom was missing at first, and then you find out that she was this lady who died, like in the 3rd game or something. I wanted to ask you about Lord Van Zykes, actually. I heard that his older brother was killed some years ago by a mass murderer known as the Professor who targeted nobles and royalty. Is that right? You Japanese are a thorough lot. You've done your research well. Yes. And you could say it was that very incident that gave rise to the Reaper. What? Why? When his brother, Clint Van Zykes, was murdered, it was just after young Barak had graduated from the University of London and become a prosecutor. When obvious criminals who managed to evade conviction in court started disappearing, rumors quickly spread throughout the capital. Londoners started to say that wherever Barak Van Zykes went, the ghost of his dead brother wasn't far behind. Oh my word. So, Lord Van Zykes isn't the Reaper, it's the ghost of his brother? Ever since that time, he became a very aloof figure in London's legal circles. Oh yes, Lord Strongheart? Go ahead. It's about Professor Harebrain's experimental machine. We'd like your permission to examine the remains, if possible. Are you well versed in science, then? Not in the slightest. In fact, you could say I was barely aware of the subject at all until recently. Well, the special dispensation legally preventing investigation of the machine is currently being annulled. Within a few hours, Dr. Scythe's team of forensic experts will begin their own investigation. But I suppose until then, there's no harm in you looking at the wreckage, as long as you don't touch nothing. Thank you. Being able to look at it is better than nothing. And I'll be able to see it too. Your time is up. You'll have to excuse me now, I'm afraid. My next engagement calls. We are extremely sorry to have troubled you when you are so busy. I have important matters to attend to in preparation for the symposium. You understand. Okay, I guess we can go to... we can talk to her first. Should we talk to her first? Oh, I guess it wants me to go there next. Like, is that what this means? Maybe this is just the new place. Whatever, we'll talk to her first.